It begins at home and then it spreads. And then I forgot that part. And so I contributed to the distance in our relationship.
Y'all, this isn't just another headline about a celebrity split. This is a devastating collapse that just ripped apart everything people believed about Tina Campbell and Teddy Campbell. Because the same man who once stood beside her under the spotlight, prayed over her, helped build what looked like a flawless gospel fairy tale, is now caught in a storm that feels far more sinister than anyone saw coming. But hold on, it goes deeper. This wasn't just infidelity. This was, allegedly, a carefully hidden second life, secret connections, calculated lies, and a betrayal that landed uncomfortably close to home. We're talking about someone who moved freely through her world, her home, her children, her trust. And then, just like that, everything unraveled. From late-night disappearances, to concealed devices, to a truth that didn't just wound her heart, it shattered her sense of self. And when it finally surfaced, it didn't just reveal him. It tore the mask off everything. The anger, the heartbreak, the emotional spiral that followed was so overwhelming, it pushed her into a space no one ever imagined she'd reach. And just when it feels like it couldn't spiral any further, after all the forgiveness, after every attempt to hold the marriage together, he stepped away. Yeah, the same man who caused the damage, allegedly chose to walk out, leaving her with one chilling question. Was any of it real, or was she just part of the illusion? And believe this is only where it starts.
Found out about it when we were taping the show. When we were taping the reality.
The picture looked flawless, almost too flawless. To everyone watching, Tina Campbell and Teddy Campbell seemed untouchable faith, family, devotion, all packaged into a gospel power couple people admired, quoted, even prayed to mirror. But beneath that carefully crafted image, something felt off. There was a change. Quiet at first. The kind of change you can't point to, but you can sense. He was there, yet somehow absent. Smiling, but distant. Present, but unreachable. And as time slipped by, that distance didn't just grow, it hardened into something colder. Something quieter. Something unsettling. Because the most dangerous cracks in a relationship don't always begin with explosions. They begin with silence.
The fact that I've been a contentious wife the entire time I've been married to him, I'm sitting up here running around being the face of gospel and
that moment right there reveals the first fracture, not just in their bond, but in the image they were presenting to the world. Because while everything appeared grounded in faith and unshakable on the surface, behind the scenes, things were already coming undone. Positions were shifting, pride was colliding, and slowly, the connection began to slip through their fingers. What makes this even more unsettling, it wasn't just about him changing. She started to notice. She wasn't the same either. And that kind of realization hits harder when you're already standing inside something that's crumbling, because now it's no longer just, what is he doing? It turns into, what didn't I see? What did I let slide? What did I turn into just to keep this from breaking? And that's where the pressure starts to build. Because while she was showing up for the world, inspiring others, speaking life, standing as a symbol of strength, at home, everything was drifting. Further and further away.
I don't need the other kind of love. I'm fine, for at least for a little while. You know what I mean? Because I got her. You know what I mean? And so
I'll
he was just,
with you next month.
That line right there isn't just about distance. It's about emotional separation. Two people sharing the same life, but operating in completely different inner worlds. And once that kind of gap opens up, that's where everything else starts to slip in unnoticed. Doubt, unease. Questions that don't have answers yet, but refuse to stay silent for long, because when someone starts behaving differently, you feel it. The delayed energy, the emotional withdrawal, the changes that don't quite add up, but still feel impossible to ignore. And the most disturbing part, every time she tried to confront it, there was nothing concrete to hold on to. No evidence, no admission, just enough normal to make her question her own instincts. And that's where the real fracture begins, because at that point, it's no longer just the relationship under pressure. It's her own mind, her judgment, her perception of what's real and what isn't. And once you start doubting your own intuition, you're already losing control of the situation. This wasn't a loud breakdown. It was slow erosion, piece by piece, moment by moment, until the version of perfect they showed the world started becoming impossible to maintain. And what no one understood back then, that wasn't even the breaking point. Not even close, because while it looked like they were simply drifting apart, something far more complicated, far more unsettling, was already unfolding behind closed doors. And it was only a matter of time before it surfaced. By the time the distance became impossible to deny, it had already crossed a point of no return. What once felt like a gut instinct had evolved into something more structured. Patterns eventually expose everything. The late nights weren't occasional anymore. The energy wasn't just off, it was inconsistent. The presence felt rehearsed, like someone performing stability instead of actually living it, and when intuition keeps tapping at you long enough, it stops being a whisper and turns into noise you can't shut out. That's exactly where Tina Campbell found herself, not with confirmation, but with weight. The kind of weight that comes when your lived reality no longer matches the story you're being told, because every time she tried to address it, the answers were smooth. The explanations were clean. Everything was denied just convincingly enough to blur the line between truth and doubt, and that's what makes it so dangerous, because suddenly, you're not just questioning them, you're questioning yourself. But here's where the story quietly pivots, because sometimes, truth doesn't arrive with confrontation. It slips in through observation, through people standing slightly outside the emotional chaos, someone close, someone alert, someone not emotionally invested enough to overlook what didn't add up, and that's when everything started to shift. Suspicion turned into watching, watching turned into noticing, and noticing turned into something harder to dismiss. Movements were no longer random. Timing started to repeat. Absences began forming a pattern that couldn't be brushed off anymore. This wasn't speculation now. This was construction. Piece by piece, moment by moment, gap by gap, and the deeper it went, the more unavoidable it became. Because when someone is living one version of their life in front of you, and another one completely out of sight, sooner or later, those two realities don't stay separate. They collide, and when they do, nothing stays intact.
The person who it was, she used to work for me, and so that broke my heart. She was like a godmother to my children.
That moment right there flips the entire situation on its head. Because now it's no longer just about betrayal in the abstract, it's about proximity, access, violation of trust at the most intimate level. Someone who wasn't on the outside looking in, but inside the life itself, inside the home, inside the daily rhythm, close enough to witness everything and still allegedly be part of the deception. And that kind of realization doesn't just sting, it shatters. Because suddenly, every memory feels rewritten, every exchange feels questionable, every moment gets re-examined under a different light. And the question is no longer, did it happen? It becomes, how long was this unfolding right in front of me without me seeing it? And just when it feels like the story can't press any harder, it does. Because confrontation doesn't arrive with peace. It arrives with pressure, with hesitation, with that one question that sits on the edge of your mind, but feels too heavy to release. And when it was finally spoken, everything froze. For a second, nothing moved. The air felt heavier. The energy changed. Because deep down, she already had the answer forming. She just needed it confirmed. Or worse, left unspoken.
He was like, Tina wants to know, and da-da-da-da-da. And I said, are you sleeping with my husband? And she hung up the phone.
That silence, that reaction, that was the answer. No denial. No explanation. Just a response that said everything without a single word. And that's when reality stops feeling like suspicion and becomes something heavier, confirmation. Because confirmation doesn't just break your heart, it rewrites your entire timeline. Suddenly, everything clicks into place. The distance, the behavior shifts, the strange emotional gaps, the quiet withdrawal, all of it starts connecting backwards. And every thread leads to one conclusion, betrayal. But not simple betrayal, something layered, calculated. A situation built on secrecy, access, and trust being used against itself. Because now the pain isn't just about what happened, it's about how it unfolded, where it unfolded, who was close enough to be part of it, and how it went unnoticed for so long. And that question, how did I not see this? That's where things start to fracture mentally. Because the mind doesn't stop at the event. It starts reconstructing everything around it, replaying moments, rewriting memories. Reevaluating every detail that once felt normal. And in that state, you're no longer just inside a relationship. You're standing inside the wreckage of what you thought it was. And the truth doesn't just reveal him. It exposes the illusion that held everything together. But what follows isn't calm. It isn't resolution. It isn't clarity. What follows is collapse. Emotional, unfiltered, overwhelming in a way that's hard to contain. Because once the truth finally lands at that level, it doesn't sit quietly in the background. It spreads. And for Tina Campbell, that emotional impact didn't just stay internal. It intensified. Because betrayal like that doesn't register as a single moment. It feels like your entire reality gets pulled apart at once. And when the mind can't process something that heavy, logic steps aside, reason fades, and all that remains is raw emotional force looking for expression. Not thoughts, not answers, just reaction. And the deeper that feeling goes, the more unpredictable it becomes. Because at that point, it's no longer just heartbreak. It's emotional overload, confusion, anger, and a psychological crash that changes how everything is seen from that moment forward.
So I had my answer. So it broke my heart. I destroyed 3 cars. I cut up and crashed up and tried to stab and plotted murders and all kind of crazy stuff because I was angry.
That moment right there isn't just anger. It's the point where control slips completely out of reach. A breaking point where emotions stop staying contained and start turning into action. And when someone reaches that space, there's no filter left. No hesitation. No logic stepping in to slow things down. Just raw reaction, driven entirely by emotional overload. Because how do you process something that hits all at once, replaced, disrespected, deceived? You don't process it, you react to it. And the most unsettling part, it's no longer just about him. It becomes about everything. Every memory, every sacrifice, every moment that once felt meaningful. All of it starts to feel altered, like it's been rewritten after the fact. And when that realization settles in, it doesn't just hurt. It changes you. Because now you're not responding to a single betrayal, you're responding to the collapse of an entire reality you thought was stable. And somewhere inside that emotional storm, there's still a voice trying to bring order to the chaos. A voice asking, do you leave? Or do you try to rebuild something that already feels beyond repair? Because even with everything that's been revealed, the anger, the embarrassment, the emotional fallout, a decision still has to be made. And this is where the story shifts again. Because while one side is falling apart, the other side is attempting repair. Or at least presenting it that way.
And if you don't, I'm going to get you back.
Yeah, I'll make this up to you.
He said,
I broke it.
If you divorce me, I'm going to pursue you till I get you back.
I did tell her.
And I was like,
That promise, that persistence, that constant I'll fix this energy, it changes the entire emotional equation. Because now it's no longer only about what was done, it's about what could happen next. And that's where the trap quietly forms. Because when the person who caused the damage suddenly shifts into remorse, when they start pushing to stay, when the words finally sound soft instead of defensive, it creates something unstable, confusion, emotional hesitation. A flicker of hope where clarity used to be. And hope, in a situation already built on rupture, can become the most dangerous force of all. Because it keeps you emotionally tied to something that already broke your trust. So instead of leaving, you pause, you rethink, you question your own limits. And the thoughts start to loop. Maybe it can still be repaired. Maybe this isn't the end. Maybe the pain means something can still be rebuilt. And that's exactly how people end up staying in places they once swore they'd leave. Not because the damage disappears, but because the idea of change feels louder than the memory of what was lost. But underneath all of that external tension, something else was happening. Something quieter, something heavier. An internal collapse. Because while the outside world sees conflict, distance, and attempts at repair, inside the person holding it all together, it's not stabilizing. It's fracturing further.
I felt too condemned because of all my mistakes. Because I didn't get the last test right. Because I was not an honorable wife to my husband because he pissed me off. So I let...
That moment reveals something people rarely admit out loud. The self-blame, the guilt, the mental exhaustion that follows betrayal once the initial shock wears off. Because when the anger finally quiets down, the mind turns inward instead. What did I do wrong? What did I overlook? Was I not enough? And those questions don't arrive with clarity. They arrive with pressure, heavy, constant, unrelenting. The kind that lingers in your thoughts, distorts your perception, and slowly starts to chip away at how you see yourself. And for someone whose identity is built on faith, strength, and being a voice for others, that internal breakdown cuts even deeper. Because now it's not just a relationship falling apart, it's identity starting to fracture. Confidence weakens, purpose feels distant, even normal moments start to feel overwhelming. And when you're in that state, even showing up becomes a challenge. Because how do you stand in front of people and pour into them when you feel like you're barely holding yourself together? And that's the part no one really sees. The private struggle behind the public image, the mental exhaustion behind the composed expression, the emotional damage that never appears outwardly, but quietly changes everything internally. At that point, the focus is no longer just on what he did. It shifts to what it did to her. And that kind of damage doesn't disappear with apologies. It doesn't reset with promises. It doesn't erase itself when things calm down. It stays. It lingers. It reshapes how love, trust, and self-worth are understood. And even when someone tries to repair what's been broken, even when they say the right things, even when they fight to return, some things don't restore to their original form. Some things change permanently. And what makes this situation even more unsettling is that despite everything that happened, the pain, the distance, the attempts to fix what was damaged, the ending didn't unfold the way anyone assumed it would. Because sometimes, the person who causes the collapse isn't the one who stays to rebuild it. And that realization is where the deepest part of the heartbreak begins. And just when it feels like this story has already taken everything from her, it delivers one final. Because after all the pain, all the forgiveness, all the exhausting attempts to rebuild something already fractured beyond recognition, he walked away. Not with clarity, not with resolution, but in a way that leaves nothing settled and everything still open. The same man who allegedly broke the trust, who promised repair, who stayed in the fight long enough to keep hope alive, ended it. Just like that. And everything shifts in an instant. Because now the story is no longer only about betrayal. It becomes about meaning. What was any of it, really? Was the love ever genuine, or just convenient? Was the loyalty ever mutual, or always imbalanced? Was she holding on to something that had already ended long before she admitted it to herself? That's the question that hits the hardest. Because it forces a truth most people avoid. Sometimes you don't lose someone the moment they leave. You lose them the moment you finally see them for who they were. And by then, the damage isn't coming. It's already done. The time is already gone. The emotional toll is already paid. And what remains isn't closure. It's silence. Heavy, unresolved, uncomfortable silence that doesn't explain itself. And now, outside the situation, the world is watching. Turning pain into commentary. Breaking down private collapse into public conversation. While she's left inside the aftermath of something that was never meant to feel this final. And that's where the real question emerges. Not just what happened here, but what would you do in her place? If loyalty stopped making sense, if trust turned out to be fragile from the start, if everything you believed in collapsed without warning, would you still hold on? Or would you finally step away? Because stories like this don't just expose relationships. They expose how fragile certainty really is. And not everyone is prepared for what that truth reveals.